Hello, this is Popular Culture Week 28. We're going to be going over the Olympic results. So for figure skating, Anna Shirkobakova got gold, Alexander Chirosa got silver, and Kari Sakamoto got bronze, and their pictures are shown above. There was a huge scandal with Camelia Valieva, who was a 15-year-old girl who was favored to win gold, but tested positive for a banned substance. This controversy took her the toll when she fell on 3 of her 7 jumping passes and ended up in 4th place. Silver place Alexander Chirosa was not happy with the result by skating with 5 quadruples and was expecting to win gold, but there is a lot of controversy around their abusive coach. So this is figure skating men, and this was first contested in the Olympic Games at 1908 Summer Olympics, and since 1924 the sport has been a part of the Winter Olympic Games. Result was gold, Nathan Chin, United States, and he was known as a quad king because he's the first figure skater to successfully compete 5 different quad jumps in competition. Silver was Yuma Kageyama from Japan, and he was a bronze medalist in the team event at the 2022 Winter Olympics, and Shoma Una from Japan is the first skater to successfully land a quadruple flip in an international competition. So there are a lot of events in speed skating. There's 1,000, 1,500, 500, and 10,000 meters. But I'm going to focus on 2 people, Erin Jackson and Gaoting Yu. So Erin Jackson won the women's 500 meter by 0.8 seconds, which is a pretty big time for a super small distance race. And she won the only gold medal for the US in speed skating. And Gaoting Yu was the first Chinese speed skater to win a gold medal in long track with his 500-meter win. He performed in the 7th of 15 groups and watched many pairs fall short of his mark. Canada won team pursuit and Belgium won mass start.
The next event is ski jump. So ski jump is a sport where competitors on skis glide down a ramp and try to go the furthest distance before touching the ground. So the men's winners was Kabayashi from Japan, silver went to Fettner from Austria, and the bronze went to Kubacki from Poland. For the women's, the gold went to Bogotaj from Slovenia, silver went to Althaz from Germany, and then bronze went to Kritzner from Slovenia.
And lastly is cross-country skiing. Jonah Sidling got gold medal, Maha Davlis got silver medal, and Jesse Dinkins got bronze medal. So cross-country skiing at the 2022 Olympics was held at the Guyangshu Nordic Center and Biathlon Center in Zhangjiakou, China. And Americans got Patterson finishing 8th with the ROC taking home the gold and silver. The ROC's Alexander Bolshanov won the men's cross-country freestyle event on Saturday to capture his 3rd gold and 5th overall medal at the Winter Olympics. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's history. This week we are going to be talking about the Haitian Revolution, and this is the 2nd lesson in our Atlantic Revolutions unit. So some background for the Haitian Revolution. If there's one place that's heavily affected by the French Revolution, which we will be talking about next week, it is the French Caribbean colony of Saint-Domingue, which is later renamed Haiti. It was considered to be the richest colony in the world at the time, producing 40% of the world's sugar and half of its coffee. Its population consists of 500,000 slaves who work on the plantations and 40,000 white people. Some are wealthy plantation owners and others are much poor. They're actually called petite blancs, which means poor whites. There are also 30,000 free people of color, many of whom are mixed race. This colony, with its enormous inequalities, was on the verge of turmoil. Consequently, the ideas from the French Revolution caused a series of violence that lasted for more than a decade.
Okay, so here's the beginning. After Christopher Columbus found this island, the Spanish began to take over and enslave the Taino and Kiboni people to mine for gold. After the gold mines were completely exhausted, the French took over and settled in the area. As a result of the colonial slavery, Haitian society was deeply ingrained with racism, classism, and sexism, as well as being discriminated against by European settlers. Eventually, once they were frustrated by their racist society and the poor conditions slaves were working in, Vincent Oge lobbied for colonial reform and led an uprising in late 1790. Within a few months, fighting began between the French and thousands of slaves.
So during the course of the revolution, in May of 1791, the French revolutionary government granted citizenship to the free people of color of Saint-Domingue. However, the European colonists there disregarded the law, and within 2 months, isolated fighting broke out between Europeans and some free people of color. In August, thousands of enslaved people rose in rebellion. The Europeans tried to appease the free people of color and mixed race people in order to quell the slave revolt, and in April 1792, the French Assembly granted citizenship to all people of color. However, the colony was torn by rival factions, some of which were supported by Spanish colonists on the eastern side of the island, or by the British troops from Jamaica. And in 1793, France sent an official to maintain order. He ordered freedom to enslaved people who joined his army and later abolished slavery altogether. A decision confirmed for the following year by the French government, who I'm pretty sure the revolution government freed all slaves everywhere in France. And in the late 1790s, Toussaint Louverture, a black military leader who had formerly been enslaved, gained control of several areas. He quickly rose to prominence within the slave rebellion. He seemingly gave his allegiance to France, however, he did pursue his own political and military goals, which included working with the British and I'm pretty sure also the Spanish. And in January 1801, Toussaint conquered the island. In May of that year, he had himself named Governor General for life. Considering cash crop exports to be vital for the island's economy, he forced the former enslaved black people back to work on the plantations under military rule and encouraged many of the French plantation owners to return. This made him very unpopular. However, the workers were no longer whipped and they were legally free and equal, and they did share some of the profits of the restored plantations. In December of 1801, the new French leader Napoleon Bonaparte sent troops to reconquer the island. Because of his policy of restoring plantations made him unpopular, Toussaint received little support and struggled for several months alone against the French forces before agreeing to a truce. He was, however, imprisoned in France and died in April of 1803. Meanwhile, Napoleon sought to re-establish slavery in French possessions and did so on the islands of Guadeloupe and Martinique. The prospect of slavery being restored on Saint-Domingue enraged the island's blacks and mixed-race people, and some of Toussaint's lieutenants resumed the war against the French in 1802. The leader of the forces included Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Henri Christophe. They were soon joined by mixed-race leaders, including Alexandre Salves Pétion, who had previously fought for Napoleon. They were infuriated that the French had restored restrictions on the wealthier free people of color. Dessalines' forces defeated the French. Okay, you can continue.
Sorry. Just continuing the course of the revolution, Dessalines' forces defeated the French, who surrendered in November 1803. The French forces withdrew from the western part of the island, and on January 1st, 1804, the entire island was declared an independent country with the name Haiti. Spain would later reclaim the eastern two-thirds of the island. However, the new country faced enormous challenges. Nearly the entire population of Haiti was utterly destitute as a result of slavery. This legacy of slavery has continued to have a profound impact on Haitian history. The aftermath. Over 100 100,000 of the island's inhabitants died during the Haitian Revolution. It also caused an economic decline that left Haiti in poverty, and the continued reparation fees to France continued to keep the country in debt. Haiti was unable to preserve or rebuild the wealth that Saint Domingue once had, which makes this country one of the poorest in the world today. Notably, the Haitian Revolution was the first and the only slave uprising that has led to the establishment of a free state without slavery.
Okay, the outcomes of the revolution. After Haiti declared independence, many European powers and Caribbean officials were worried that enslaved people in other places might be inspired by Haiti's example. Fearing the spread of slave revolts, they refused to recognize or have any dealings with Haiti. Reaction in the United States was mixed, with the white leaders in the slave-owning states doing all they could to suppress news of the revolution, fearing that it might spur enslaved people in the US South to also rebel. However, merchants in the free states hoped to trade with Haiti rather than with European powers. France finally recognized Haitian independence in 1825. However, Haiti had to pay France a large sum annually until 1887, which was enforced under military threat, and Britain finally recognized Haiti in 1833, followed by the United States in 1862, after the succession of the southern slave states. On the other hand, the Haitian Revolution was something remarkable and unprecedented. Socially, the lowest class, slaves, became equal, free, and independent citizens. This was the only completely successful slave revolt in history. Politically, they have also thrown out French rule, becoming the second independent republic in the Americas and the first non-European state to emerge from Western colonization. That's the end of this week. Thank you for listening.
Okay, welcome back to Physics Week 10. Today we are going to be going over laws of motion. So to talk about motion, we need to talk about force. So a force is anything that can change the state of motion of an object, like a push or pull. I think we've gone over this once in a previous lesson. Yeah. So you use force, say, when you push a letter on like a computer keyboard, or when you kick a ball, like this dude over there, very intensely kicking this soccer ball. So the point being is that forces are everywhere, and gravity acts as a constant force on your body that pushes you down, keeping you secure on planet Earth so that you don't float away. Force continued. So to describe a force, we use the direction and strength, also known as magnitude, from our previous lessons. Like if you remember, this is a vector force. We use direction, which is this. Oh wait, no, direction is this, like north, the northeast, right? I guess if this is north, this is east, this is south, and west. And this is like going in the northeast direction, right? And then this is the magnitude, or as they are, we could say strength. So for example, when you kick a ball, you are exerting force in a specific direction. Like see this little kid, he like kicked the ball over there, and then now he's gonna kick it back. Hold on, it's coming. Yeah, oh yeah, like that. So for example, this kid is kicking the ball towards the goal, which changes the state of motion of the soccer ball from being still to moving. And did I already say that? When you kick a ball, you are exerting force in a specific direction. So like just now, we just saw the kid kick it up there, and that is the direction that the ball will travel. And so the harder you kick the ball, the stronger the force you place on it, and the farther it will go. Laws of motion. So now moving on to the laws of motion, we must never forget our great friend who came up with them. A scientist named Isaac Newton, this brilliant, dashing guy who you've probably already seen a billion times because I always post the same picture of, came up with the 3 laws of motion to describe how things move scientifically. And he's important because he described how gravity works, which is an important force that affects everything. Okay, so the first law of motion, otherwise known, which basically means another way we phrase or talk about the first law of motion is called the law of inertia. And inertia is the tendency to remain unchanged or continue an existing state. For example, like earlier we saw the kid kicking a ball, right? So how should I say this? Actually, never mind. I'm not going to continue that topic. So the first law says that any object in motion will continue to move in the same direction and speed unless forces act on it. So let me draw here. That means that if you kick a ball, let's say there's a ball right here, and there's a kid, I don't know, having a fun time kicking a ball. Whew. This is the ball, right? Okay, so that means if you kick the ball, it will, I guess it will fly forever until it becomes a bright star in the distance, unless some sort of forces act on it, which is, I'm glad that is true. As strange as this may sound, it's true. So when you kick a ball, forces start to act on it immediately, which means like as soon as you kick it. So for example, these include resistance or friction from the air and gravity. So this ball is moving like, I guess forward, right? And I guess a bit up. There's like some force. But gravity is, pushing this down. So that's gravity. It's pushing it down. And there's air resistance, right? So these kind of all counteract. And so this is not what happens. In the end, it goes up and it goes down, right? That's what happens when you kick a ball. The second law of motion. The second law states that the greater the mass of an object, the more it will take to accelerate the object, which means to like make it move faster. Yeah. So there is an equation that says, there's an equation for that, which is force equals mass times acceleration, otherwise as known as F equals ma. I think we went over that on a previous lesson too. Wow, we're making so many connections to our previous lessons, aren't we? So this means that the harder you kick a ball, the farther it will go. So if this person, this cute kid kicks it with like this much force, it'll end up here. But if this kid kicked it with like this much force, it would go much further, like, I don't know, off the screen. So somewhere out there, you know what I mean. I guess this seems kind of obvious to us, but having an equation just to spell it out for us, I guess it just helps the math and science. It makes it easier for us to calculate everything. And this is like a lot of scientists very appreciate this equation, Next is the third law of motion. And the third law states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And we can kind of see that here, right? Like, okay, so let me first elaborate. So when I said earlier that this kid was kicking in this direction, this is a vector, right? And each vector can be split into like a X and Y direction. So this vector right here can be split into like this and this. So this is why I drew out the force to be like up here and up here. And so I talked about earlier about air resistance, which is why it might slow down and drag this force down, which causes it to slow down in the x direction. And gravity, that it brings everything down eventually, right? That's what we know about gravity. And so that kind of counteracts with this force, which causes the ball to eventually fall back here and not fly off into some distance like a faraway star, if you know what I mean. Okay, so lastly, I have some fun facts for us all, and it's that Isaac Newton got the idea for gravity when an apple fell off a tree and hit him on the head. And I don't know about you, but if an apple fell on my head, I'd be more like, what the heck? What was that for? Right. Next, forces are measured in newtons. This is after Isaac Newton, who I talked about earlier, not fig newtons, even if they are tasty. And if you didn't know what fig newtons are, in the US, they're basically like soft cookies filled with fig paste inside. Yeah, something like that. The next fact, gases and liquids push out in equal forces in all directions. I'm not sure if you've thought about how gases and liquids kind of get around doing forces and all that stuff, but that's pretty cool, isn't that? Pushes out in all equal forces in all directions. Yeah. So this is called Pascal's law because it was discovered by a scientist, Blaise Pascal. And lastly, when you go upside down in a roller coaster loop the loop, which is like, I don't know, whee, and there's like I don't know, like 3 people and they're like, whee. I don't know what they're saying. A special force called centripetal force keeps you in the seat and from falling out. So it's basically like, there's like this inward force from anywhere within the circle, and it points to here, and we call this centripetal force. But we really won't get into that much detail about centripetal force. So yeah, it's just something cool to know about. And here is, we have an additional video. Let me check that I'm sharing sound. Okay. Oh gosh, I can't zoom in. Okay, I need 1 second. No, okay, you didn't see that. You didn't see that. You didn't see anything. Okay, wait, no, this, I had no clue full screen mode is not available anymore. What? I have to watch this on YouTube now. That's kind of awkward. Bear with me for 1 second.
There are a lot of things happening in the world. Objects move, fall, and rest all around us. You may think you understand why things move or don't move. But did you know that the forces acting on these objects can be measured and their motion predicted? Renowned English scientist Sir Isaac Newton wanted to understand the world better. He thought he could describe the movements of the universe through mathematical observation. In 1687, he published these observations in a book, which outlined his understanding of the laws of motion. These 3 laws of motion are still in use today and can help us understand the relationship between a body and the forces acting on it. Newton's first law of motion is often stated as, an object in motion will stay in motion, and an object at rest will stay at rest, unless acted upon by an outside force. This law is also called the law of inertia, since inertia is the tendency of an object to keep doing what it's doing. You have experienced Newton's first law if you have ever used a swing on a playground. In order to start swinging, you have to use a lot of force, but once you get going, it can be hard to stop. Here on Earth, there are some forces working on objects all the time. When you throw a ball upward, it doesn't keep going up forever because the force of gravity pulls it downward. Once it hits the ground, friction, or resistance caused by surfaces rubbing together, will eventually bring it to a stop. Newton's second law says that force is the product of mass times acceleration. Mass is the amount of matter, or stuff, in an object. To make something accelerate or speed up, you have to apply a force. The amount of force it takes to move an object changes depending on how massive it is. Think about it. You would need more force to move a bowling ball than to move a beach ball of the same size. The greater the mass of the object, the more force it will take to accelerate the object, and applying more force will make the object move faster. Newton's third law of motion says that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. If you exert a force on an object, it exerts an equal force back on you. For example, a ball hitting the ground exerts force downward. The floor exerts an equal force upward. This is the principle that allows rockets to launch or jellyfish to swim. By exerting a force downward, an equal and opposite force pushes upward, and the object accelerates. We can also see the third law in action when birds fly. Their wings press down against the air. The air pushes up against their wings, allowing them to move upwards. Another good example of this law is skateboarding. The skater pushes backwards against the ground with their foot. The ground pushes forward with equal force. Since the wheels of the skateboard reduce the friction between the person and the ground, they are able to move forward for some time before forces slow them down again. Although these three laws were written down more than 300 years ago, they are still important now for understanding the way things move and represent the foundation of classical mechanics. I hope you enjoyed learning about Newton's 3 laws of motion today. Goodbye till next time.
Oops. Yep, I hope you guys enjoyed learning about the 3 laws of motion. And here is one last meme for today. If you understood Newton's first law, a body in motion tends to stay in motion, aka this cat. A body at rest tends to stay at rest. Soon there will be 2 bodies in motion. That face though. Oh my god, this is so funny. And these are the sources that I used for today's presentation. Thank you for coming, and I hope you'll see us next time as well. Bye.